Welcome, everyone, to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we're your hosts, Beth Orr
and Bridget Corns.
And today we're excited to talk about a topic related to manifestation. And sometimes the very things that we're doing and our thoughts can be blocked because of a different stance that we have, just an easy little shift, but it's not so easy. So we want to bring awareness to it so that for those of you that are out there trying to manifest something in your life, that you're able to consider this in what you're doing. So we're going to talk today about when we act from a space of love or when we act from a space of fear. These are two very different orientations. We can have something that we're looking at. We can have a situation in front of us or a circumstance or a decision that we're making in our life. And regardless if we're looking at it, the very same situation, whether we're looking at it from a position of what's right, where's the love in this? How can I act in love? Where's my own orientation of love? But that's the desire, is to act in a way that is less egoic and more for all of us versus fear. And we know, so we're going to talk about like, what are the things that we're telling ourselves? What are the things that we're feeling? How does that shift the experience? And does it really change what's happening based upon our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions and our experiences inside? Does that really change the outcome of what it is that we're working for? And the answer is yes. Spoiler alert. It does. It completely changes the entire thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and what it kind of takes for us, the considerations that it takes for us to be able to make that shift, small shift, to have a huge outcome in what it is that we're considering.
Yeah. Do you want to start with some examples maybe to ground this topic?
Yeah. Do you want me to give an example, or do you have one top of mind?
So I have one that just came to mind, and I think it's
Right.
these opportunities present themselves over and over in our lives. So I have plenty of examples that I could offer of where this has showed up. One, I think the first one that I immediately thought of was around the space of when you're in a career or a job that you have trained for, that you've interned for, that you've paid for a master's degree for, so that you can have this job, this career, and you're finally in it. And then you realize a little down the road or a long way down the road into this job that it doesn't feel right. It feels like it's kind of rubbing against you in a way where you don't necessarily fit. Maybe it's because of the culture of the place that you're in, or because of the nature of the work that you don't feel aligned with it anymore, or whatever it may be. But this presented itself very obviously to me at a point in my life, and I had to make a decision. And I wasn't the version of me that I am now. So the version of me now would have known and had felt very confident about making that decision because I would have known that it was right for me. But the version of me then was so scared that if I leave this job that doesn't even pays me a wage that I can live off of, if we're being honest. But I knew the people I worked with. I knew my students. I knew the culture. I knew the work. I was good at it. And generally, when I was working with the students, I really loved it. So many things about it that weren't right for who I was becoming and who I knew myself to be. So the fear showed up as, it's so interesting because I wrote down, I would have said that I was afraid of doing something different, but the truth was that what I was afraid of was where I was right then.
Oh, wait, tell me more.
The fear wasn't in the change. The fear was in where I was right then. There, it was a daily, like, I know that people can relate to this. When you drive to work and you get the sinking feeling and you get the lump in your throat and you get the weight on your shoulders and you dread walking into that building one more time, and yet you do it day after day after day after day. That's where the fear was. That's what I was feeling, was the fear of my reality that I was living with. But I would have said, oh, but I'm afraid to make a change because I don't know what's out there and I know what's here. So I know the demon I'm living with right now. And what I would say now is that I was projecting the fear that I was currently feeling
Yeah.
onto the decision and the change, thinking, well, that could be awful. But this was what was awful.
Yeah.
This was where the fear was.
This is a really important distinction I think that you're bringing up, because I think a lot of people can identify, and I'm wondering, like I identify with, that was my truth too. I told myself, because here's the thing, we come up with a truth that makes sense given who we are at any given moment. So what I knew, and when I was like, okay, well, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? You go with truths that you've heard of that. Oh,
Hmm.
I've heard somebody else saying that they were, that it's the evil that I know now. That's out there. So then you're like,
Yep.
yeah, 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 that's it. That's it. Right. But what you're saying is, and it's so important to remind ourselves, and what I deeply know now is that when we're scared, when we're sick from where we are currently, when our current situation is bringing up these negative emotions, then that's the filter that we see our future through.
Yep.
So we can't get the full glimpse and the picture of this vision for very long, because unless we're staying in sustained meditation, we have a lot of silent time, then we don't give the future a filter that's true.
Hmm.
The future actually has a filter that's how you feel now, but that's not how you're going to feel in this future. So if you can't remove yourself and become in a neutral space, or create the feeling that you would feel when you're in this new life, then you're thinking about a future through the lens of now. And so the fear is causing your future to look in a way that's not true. It's through who you are right now. So whatever your orientation is, whatever your emotional frequency is what you're going to put on that thing. So that's what you're describing, is that sickness, that oh, I don't want to go to work today, is what was your lens for this future life, that
Yeah,
looked different but still felt the same, because that's, we weren't mining for how we would feel in that reality.
of course. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
other part of this was that the me now knows I love who I am and how I get to serve people. But the me then didn't know what else I would do. So there was this big
Mm,
scary void of, if I step out of this, then what am I stepping into? I didn't have anything to fill in that blank.
yeah.
So as we know where this story goes, I didn't take a step. I stayed where I was and I stayed put, and I got sicker and sicker and physically ill,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I showed up to, our students head off a couple days. And as you do with teachers, you have trainings during that time, professional development. So we had a conference or professional development that we were hosting, and I showed up to it, and my supervisor saw me and he said, "You don't look okay. You need to go home." And I wasn't sick. I wasn't
But
ill with
you,
anything, but I was not okay. I looked pale. I looked like corpse-like. It was awful. It looked terrible. Um, and things played out that allowed me to exit that situation, because it was like the universe created the opening. And
mm,
I wouldn't wish that exit on anyone, which is, I think, why I'm so passionate about how we serve people now, is allowing people a way to see the love in the decision that they can make.
Yeah.
versus the fear. But all I
Yeah.
could see was the fear, and I didn't have anyone walking with me to show me how I could make that decision for myself. And so the universe guided me to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's really interesting too is that when we're in that space and we're abandoning ourselves, we're not loving ourselves by being in that space. It's oftentimes not coming from a space of very intentionally just like doing something mean towards ourselves or not loving ourselves, but we haven't even mind what it is that we want enough
Hmm.
to know
Hmm.
what's for us and for somebody else. And it's funny because we always presume that being in our job is for everybody else. We always are like, oh, we're going to let people down if we don't stay here. But in actuality, if it's not for us, it's not for them either anymore. And that's the realization that I think we come to sometimes is that it's if it's right, it's for everybody involved, which means that, ooh, I'm creating a space for somebody else to come in here and do this. And I remember what I felt like when I started. So I'm excited for them to get somebody who felt like that when they started, and for me to find something that I'm going to do that feels fresh like that too, right? And so, but it starts from having a, ooh, what do I want? What do like? Where's the love in this? And you said when you were describing your job and you were talking about safety, basically, it felt safe, right? So it's the evil that you
Yeah.
know, so it feels safe.
Yeah.
But you're also describing love. I'm sure that you love some of the kids and you love some of the people you
Hmm.
worked with and you loved doing that work because it really did light you up in many ways. But what we forget is that sporadically being lit up once every like 10% of the time isn't what God put us here to do. I'm not here to be lit 10% of the time.
Right.
I'm here to be lit always. And we think that we can't. Like, I think of some of the darkest times that I've had. Like when I lost my grandmother and I was going through that last month with her, that was one of the darkest times I had. But there was a lot of love in that for myself and her and my family. Love was all over. Fear would have been go back home. Don't watch this. You're not strong enough to go through
Mm-hmm.
this. You're never going to forget this moment and you're going to be stuck remembering her this way.
Hmm.
Fear tells me all the ways and reasons I can't do something. Fear tells me I'm not enough, but I'm linked to infinite possibilities and divine love. I have the choice to show up in love regardless of how emotional this time is. And the reality is that I know at this juncture in my life that the times I think about that last month are like less than 1%. It's like in this moment right here, and less than 1% of the time do I think about those moments.
Yeah.
Most of my time is laughter and fun and good memories. It's love.
Hmm.
So we know the difference between, in any moment, we know the difference between acting in love or not. But oftentimes we get confused that externally focused love is more important than ourselves in the equation.
Mm.
So we get it confused that we're supposed to show love, but we're not supposed to show that to ourselves or receive it from others. So an example is if I'm with you and I need to cry, it's a radical act of self love to allow myself to cry. That is self love. Why? Because if I push it down and I pull myself up by my bootstraps and I get into that orientation, I've pushed pain lower and now it's in my body. And now I'm going to have it come out in all kinds of weird ways and
Yep.
it's detached from what it really is. But if I show myself self love and say, I love you so much that I want to know what this is about, and I'm going to let you feel it so that it can come up and out. And then it's not rattling around in there, coming out
Hmm.
sideways. I actually just dealt with it.
Yeah.
And then that's loving myself because I'm not going to let myself have a thorn stuck inside me and not pull it out. I'm going to take that thorn out. You wouldn't, if you got a splinter, you wouldn't sit there and be like, ah, whatever.
What is that
Why
children's
wouldn't you
book
get that? I don't
with
know.
the lion who gets the thorn? And everyone thinks that the lion is just the meanest and most angry and most awful person to be around. And then I can't remember how it ends, but it just you just like jostled that loose. I can see the pictures of the book in my head. And then I think it's like a little animal comes along, like a mouse or something, and should be terrified at the lion. He goes, "Oh, you poor thing, you have this awful thorn," and pulls it out and gets to see the real lion, like this loving and warm and compassionate being who was just in pain.
Yeah.
And it all came out the wrong way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's what I've told people before when it's so hard for our orientation that we walk around with that we're told we're supposed to have socially or in relationships. When we're told that we're not allowed to be loud or emotional or,
Yep.
whatever.
Take up space.
Right. But I can't love you well if I'm not taking care of myself. I can't.
Yeah.
And as a mother, I'll tell the kids, I could either do this for you right now and be angry and resentful about it because I have a headache or I need to lay down or there's something else that is pulling on me that I have to get done. Or I can go take care of the thing that I need to take care of so I'm in a better spot and then come back to this with you and be a way better version of me.
Yep.
Now, it takes some like groundwork and emotional intelligence to have those conversations,
Yes.
but that works with my kids, that works in intimate relationships.
Yep.
I can't be the partner for you who you need and deserve me to be. And here's why. Here's what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's not loving someone else when we show up as that version of us.
Yeah.
That's not love. So we have to reorient to how do I make myself healthy and whole so that I can then show up really, truly and be love in all
Yes.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that going back to that kind of that self-love piece is such a foreign thing, especially for women. Many of the people who listen to our work are women, um, and women get this message that we are secondary to men. And for you men out there who question this, like ask us more about this. Um, there are so many times that we are taught to put our needs secondary, without even recognizing that we're doing it.
Yeah.
When with our kids, with
Yep.
in parenting, men aren't given that same kind of expectation compared to women in homes. And and there are some homes, don't get me wrong, there's going to be some highly evolved homes. Like I've heard of different parents on different parenting programs with conscious parenting. So it's definitely in our time, we definitely have some households that have a different orientation, but by and large, in the age in which we grew up, it was very different. And so this self-love, like you said, and what you're alluding to, sometimes we think that it's selfish to show love to ourselves. And we get really like, I remember some of the most damaging things that were told to me as a child. I remember coming about from somebody saying, "You're selfish." Like one time, one of the people in my family said that, and it was because they were angry about something. And so they
Hmm.
threw that out there. And I realized that now, but it stuck with me. And it was doing something kind for somebody else that took away from them that they didn't even believe was a true thing. They couldn't even comprehend that at my age, at 16, I was dealing with a friend who was in that much need. but I was probably saved somebody's life that day when I left that situation. So I had to come to terms with that somehow I was being selfish for caring for somebody else that was in need. But also, I had to balance like, who am I and what can I live with? So I was in a position to stay and make a family member comfortable because I was spending time with them. Or I could go to a friend who never called me in this kind of level of distress and be there for them.
Mm.
And and I remember thinking I couldn't live with myself for one and I could live with myself for the other. And that's what I came down to. I was 16 years old. And I was like, I've got to maybe make this person disappointed and deal with this because this is something I couldn't live with. But the love to myself was to say, no, 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 you have to do what is right within you to be there for somebody in need or to have this person believe something about you that just like you're trying to navigate something that's not true and like that this will work its way out, right? You have to trust that. Um, and I'm kind of looking over because I want to share this as kind of as we're moving into this conversation. Um, my friend J.S. Park, who has the book The Voices We Carry, and I love this because he and I both worked at Metropolitan Ministries. He's a chaplain at Tampa General, and I he was a chaplain at the organization that I was at when I was doing leadership and counseling. And we're both kind of talking like I look at this subtitle now and I realize we both got into authenticity work. Like
Mhm.
this is about finding yourself,
Yeah.
right? And he had like 16 quotes for his book and this is one of them and he chose this one just because the universe told him to. And it's so perfect for our discussion and it's been on my nightstand every night to look at this. And it says, to love unconditionally doesn't mean to give away foolishly. Boundaries and self care are part of love, or we cannot love at all. So, love must set people free, and that includes you too. So many times when we're fearful, I think sometimes what we fear is what other people's response is going to be to our truth. If we were true and we just said what it was that was on our heart, we're not sure people would love us, or we're not sure that people would follow us, or we're not sure that people wouldn't have a strong reaction. And we don't like strong reactions and we don't like all those feelings. So we just kind of go along with it and abandon ourselves without ever giving a person who says that they love us an opportunity to really love us. Meaning, you get to love me, like the me that you say you love. And I want to keep being more deeply me. So if you love me, who I am, the me that's really me and not the me that I'm being for you, then you're going to love who I decide to become because you love me, right? And so to me, some of this is really set in me. This quote's really set in me so many times, like hundreds of times over the last few years, because what it did was is it really said to me, yeah, that's not selfish. That's self-love. Now, selfish is it's not right for you and it's only right for me and I don't care. And I want to do it. And even though there may be a reasonable way that we can move forward where we're both allowed to have a space, I don't care what your space is. That's selfish. You have a desire, you have a need, and I don't care. But self-love is I have a desire and a need, and I want to listen to yours too. And I want you to love yourself enough to say it. And then let's see where
Mm.
that lands us. And if
Mhm.
we can't move forward in mutual love, as opposed to, I don't know what it is that you want, but this is what I want, and I'm afraid to say it how it is. What if we were to be authentically ourselves and we were to love ourselves and let other people be authentically themselves and love themselves? And then we were to see where we landed. And as you're writing that down, I have to presume that if we go there and we're both in fourness, then that's the space that I want to be in. I want to be in a space that nobody can feel resentful about where I've led them if they are willing to lead themselves and
Mm-hmm.
they are willing to do the work to mine for what they really want. They won't get misled when you know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to do the work to know who you are, to love yourself. Who are you? Don't, it can't be who everybody else tells you. Oh, I'm going to be this person because this person will love me. And then I'll just add a few people on that are going to love me because I'm that version of me that this person likes. What the heck, man?
There's so much I'd like to say. You just
Jart
drop
down.
like
Okay.
amazing,
Do it.
amazingness after amazingness. Um, so I want to go back to I love the radical honesty curriculum and what they talk about. And one of the things that they'll say is that you can either choose to dig yourself into a lie, and once it's revealed, it's going to be painful and devastating. Or you can choose to just be the true you and potentially rub people the wrong way right now and let it work itself out. But either way, there's going to be a reaction. So which reaction would you prefer? And you said you can let someone love this version of you who you are pretending to be, but then they're not truly loving you. So do you want to be loved or not?
Mm.
Because you're not being loved if you're showing up as this version of you because you want to receive that love. They're eventually going to find out who you are. And then it's going to be really sad and really painful because you, the true you, wasn't being held in love. And the same goes the opposite way. I want to love you, not some version of you that you put together because you think it's going to be more palatable for me to love. I want to know all of the little parts of you and integrate them all into the love that I have for you.
Mhm.
That sounds way better.
Well, and which person do you want in your life? Which person do you want? Do you want to be with a person who there's the bottom line is that
Yeah.
some people out there know that there is somebody that they will probably lose. Why are you trying to keep him? Why are you trying to keep him? I mean, like if people aren't for you, they're against you.
Right.
And so you're either agreeable to them being against you and you're in cahoots with them, or you're for you. And trust me when I say self advocacy is a lost art and it's something that we need. We need to be able to advocate for ourselves. And it's not like a clumsy, mean thing. It's a very stand in yourself, know who you are kind of thing that actually, I think sometimes we don't stand for what we believe because we haven't done the work and we don't know yet. From our earliest times, and we talk about this in the course, from our earliest times, um, people tell us who we are and what we enjoy and what we like. We grow up. I mean, our
Yes.
brains are underdeveloped until we're 25. So we're still taking in. If when we're with a family, become we believe what our family believes. We get into a church, we believe what that church believes. We get with our friends at school, we believe what they believe. We get with a spouse, we get married early, we believe what they believe. We go into the military, we believe what they believe. Anything we do until we're 25 years old, it's with an underdeveloped brain that's super susceptible. And we're just believing what it is that somebody else tells us we should believe. And so when we think about that, then it's hard to have that self-determination when we've had an orientation of you tell me what I do. You tell me what I like. You tell me how to be okay here in this community. That's when we get like we're in these communities and then we go off to college and we get spit out. And then we're feeling some kind of like where what do I do? Where do I find my way? How do I make it here? You know? Because your lens is rubbing up against a whole bunch of new beliefs. This is why people try to convince people not to go off to college because they're like, "Ooh, God,
Yeah.
if this person goes off to college, I'll never see him again. They're gonna learn things they didn't know. They're gonna believe things they didn't believe, and they may not come back."
Yeah.
Then your love gets really tested.
I'm glad you brought it back around to this because another thought I had was when we know we're in that place where we're in fear, where we're unhappy, and where we're not fully expressing, it can be really painful to acknowledge that we're there and then also shift our gaze to what it is that we do want and who we truly are. Because if we're honest that we're unhappy and this isn't us, then when we look at the things that would make us happy and we look at the version of us who we could be, because that's the true expression of ourselves, then we have to acknowledge and we have to be honest that where we are isn't right.
Mm,
And you can't undo knowing that.
yeah.
Once you've acknowledged that, it's never going to go away. Now you're
Oh my
aware.
God. Okay. You just saying that, I was like, okay, love requires us to be truthful, and fear requires us to keep up the lies. Fear requires us, like, we've talked about how the world loves denial because denial and suppression mean my pain doesn't exist. And fear is all over that chord. The denial, suppression, not being honest, not telling the truth. Fear is all over that. So think about this. Somebody's afraid of a whole group of people, and they're like, oh, this whole group of people that I don't even know, they're awful. So you haven't even read the book, you don't even know anything about it, but you've got something to say about it, right? So when you think about that, that's fear. I don't know people. All I know is what people tell me. And so put up a wall, do whatever you got to do because I'm afraid. And everybody else outside me tells me my orientation is this. So I need to have denial. I need to have suppression. When somebody tells me a story that actually says something different, it's like, uh, what do you mean? I've got 99% of facts that says that that's not true. And you're giving me a fact that says that that's not true. And these people are actually humans. The God that I believe actually created them too. Denial and suppression are needed. Fear is needed because you can't tell the truth. Because if you tell the truth, then it means you might be wrong. And if you're wrong when it comes to religion, that is your spiritual ascension. That is your place on the other side. Whatever your belief is, if you're tied up in the transactional piece of getting to heaven, if you're tied up in that, then my wrongness means that I might not get over to the other side. And what limited information I know about the other side, I want to get on to this side. But as opposed to really digging deep and saying, ooh, I might go across my culture, I might try to learn something different. I want to make sure because it's in my best interest to know if this is true or not. Because if it's not true, it's my well being. So I'm not going to believe a collective that's wrong. But love is 100% of the time based upon truth. Like you have to, like when you love somebody, there is some ultimate truth that you're hanging on to, right? Like there's something that there's like this lens of like even when somebody's loving somebody and it's not the most beautiful thing for you, it's coming from a space of trying to do something that you believe is tied into divinity. It's
Mm.
always trying to, it's like sometimes we get mis like I saw that a lot in domestic violence. People stayed in
Mm-hmm.
situations that were emotionally, spiritually, physically depraving and harmful to them. But it came from a place of really trying to love somebody and seeing the best in them. But the thing is, again, let's go back to our original point. Self-love has to be a part of it. If
Exactly.
you're not being loved, God doesn't expect us to be in situations where we are not loved. Now, on occasion, somebody has something happen and it's not their optimal self. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about every day, ongoing, for ourselves to be depleted, to be talked down to, requires us to be so consumed by fear. And that is not a stance that allows for our most loving self to be able to come out.
Yeah.
It's not good for that person. It allows for that person to stay their less high self, right? But either way, when we're and I just want to go back to this orientation. Sometimes I get so bogged down in a scenario, and the quickest way for me to get out of it is to realize where I'm suffering, ask myself if that's true. And usually the root of it is some sort of misguided, unclear fear. And once I'm like, it's rubbish, how could I look at this situation from a space of love? Or how can I just, sometimes I have to just get back to God. Sometimes I have to just say, I know that what the strain of thoughts I'm on are not positive. I give this back to you. Here's the situation. Can you present some love and some light to this? And then
Mm.
I just release and go back to loving in the world and bringing light to the world. And then that allows the spaciousness for what God wants to do or the universe wants to do to be attracted to me. But I can't get there if my mind is on a I don't see a way and I'm afraid.
Mm.
I can't come up with a way that's actually going to be fruitful or loving because I'm not on that thread.
Right. Right.
I can't even see the possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I had written down before we started recording, um, characteristics of love and fear. Love grows us and fear slows us. Love frees
Mm,
us and fear controls us.
yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. I do want to give like one more example just so that we can kind of help people now that we're kind of you're starting to percolate on like wait what are different you're probably by now thinking of what are different times in my life where I've had something that I've been afraid of, and you may even be thinking about what would love have looked like in that situation, or you might be thinking about something that you're working with right now that spends a lot of time, or something that you're focused on that you're afraid a lot. And so I would just encourage you to be thinking about in this scenario, trusting that when you're in this place of fear, you're actually blocked from any kind of vision that is based upon pure universe. It's always going to have some elements of ego in it when you're still in that vibration, right? So we're
Mhm.
blocked from that. So the allowing comes to why don't I just create some spaciousness for whatever the vibration and feeling would be that aligns with what I would feel like if I had the vision for something that's optimal in this situation. So why don't I think
Yeah.
about spend some time. I'd be better to spend 10 minutes in meditation thinking about what would this look like if it was perfectly in place,
Hmm.
how I kind of think it might be, or if I just felt the feeling of what I hope to feel instead of what I'm feeling now. You'd be in a better position to attract it and then release it with
Yeah.
seemingly no work. But that
Yep.
10 minutes of work getting your orientation and your feeling right would align. And so I'll give you an example. Recently, something I'm going through is, I'm in a season right now of 2 weeks at home to finish my book. Those of you that know me know I've been writing a book for years, and I've had bouts of like great getting all this stuff out, but then a crippling self-doubt, or why, like not even like a why me, but because I know this is mine to do, but like not feeling like a writer, even though I'm writing,
Mm,
like not feeling good enough, right? Or knowing how, because it's such a unique exercise. It's so different and challenging, right? So I'm in this season of like, I really believe that I can finish in these 2 weeks given where I'm at. And so I've been spending these 2 weeks with a couple of different projects, but mainly working on the book. But in the beginning of the week, last week, I was kind of like, what makes you think that you can accomplish this in 2 weeks when it took you 2 years and you still couldn't do it?
mm,
And I was like, fear, right? All kinds of fear coming up. Um, Sadness, which is on the fear thing. When you look at fear, you got some sadness of, well, my grandma's not going to be here. So that brings up a lot of emotions, right? This was something we were going to do together, and I didn't make it happen. So then I start to get non-love towards myself. So sometimes it's not fear, but it's non-love, right? Same kind of thing. And so I start going on, and then I stop myself and I was like, wait, do you believe? So I get into truth. Do you believe that the book is still yours to accomplish?
mm,
Yes, I do. Okay. So it didn't pass you by? No. Okay, so that's a truth. The book is still mine to accomplish. Do you believe that your grandma had something to say in all of this to the world that was going to die with her? No. The book was something that was hers to share in this book that lives on. She's still here. I feel her. She's still part of this. I have no idea. I'm on the infancy of understanding how much that happens here, in what ways it impacts people beyond. But I know that when I reach out, they reach back. So I also know that what I'm doing here affects what they're doing there, which means that what I accomplish here affects them in some way there. So if something that I do that is connected to her is done in love, and I'm able to give her love on the other side, I have to believe that that is serving her mission too, is helping her in some way, right? So I start thinking about love and what's true. And the truth is, this is my book. This is our book. This is something that we knew we were going to accomplish, that I'm still going to accomplish. It's now. I want to do it. And even more, because I started to believe all those things and I started to say, no, this is true. All that other stuff, it's not true. I know it's fear. So I just let it go because I knew it wasn't true. Didn't even resonate with me. But here's the thing, it required me to address it. Each one of those thoughts required attention. So I had to stop on it and say, is this true? No.
mhm.
Okay, let that go. Is this true? Yes. Okay, keep that. That feels right. And then that orientation and releasing what wasn't true and addressing it instead of pushing it down. And it's
Yep.
and it's some vague something that it's not what it is. And now it's attached to other things. It's this thing. Is it true? No. Get rid of it. It's not wrestling around in there with other things tainting it. It's gone. Now the truth is in here. It's part of my lens. And that truth has now allowed for me to have an orientation and a frequency that puts truth on this entire project. And for the last week, and I've got one more week to go, I've been accomplishing things. I've been making progress. There's been space, but guess what I learned? I didn't know that I wasn't the version of me before that could actually finish this book. The vague fear that I had before was actually me saying to myself, I can't do this. But it was actually me grieving. This isn't the right time to do this, and I really wish that it was.
Mm.
I wish I could be the version of me that it could accomplish what my ego wants, which is to do this with my grandmother. But if I had put out the book, the learnings would have been good, but they wouldn't have been tied together. And because I've gone 6 years beyond that now, that trip, I now know what it did to me because the seeds of what it was going to do were planted, and now I'm the version of me, and I know what the seeds are going to do. But I only had ideas before.
Mm,
So before I would have written a book that says, I think this might happen. Now I get to say, and this was an origin through this. And now you see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
some of the unfolding comes out in this. Like I get to make that connection that I wouldn't have been able to do before.
Hmm.
So I have to believe, given what I've decided to do now, that all of this timing was fine. And if along the way I can trust, and this is where I'm at right now, if along the way I can trust that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I have no idea the timing of things, it's the what and the why, and not the when and the how. When I can believe that and see that in practice, I can stick to the love over the fear because I got enough history of examples that, yeah, I can totally react in love. I don't need to have fear because I know that fear never gets me to where I'm choosing to go.
Right. Right.
I'm not a victim. I'm not disempowered. I'm totally in control of my life. Anything I want to do or don't want to do, I can.
Yeah.
So I share that example because that I think that's it's a tangible, easy way to show that I could stay in not enoughness and fear because I'm not addressing the truth of each one of those little voices that comes in, or I can wrap it in love and put some truth on it and then live that instead and say, oh my gosh, it's going to
Mm,
accomplish exactly what it was supposed to accomplish. It's just going to accomplish something different than what I thought. And it's going to be a different experience. So now I get to actually step into my grandma isn't going to be alive when this happens. But guess what? She gets to be somebody who's a part of it from beyond. She's going to get a kick out of that. The number of ways this woman's going to show up is going to be awesome. She's going to show up in so many ways at so many events. It's going to be cool.
I think that was a perfect way to wrap us up.
So we'd love to hear what this kind of brought up for you. We'd love to hear maybe examples because this is one of the things we talk about in our Tuesday night Zoom group meeting with the folks that are going through this course. We explain how there are these moments where we have wins or we have an understanding of a concept that when we share it, it helps illuminate it and fill it in more completely to other people. So it helps us really understand concepts. So if there's something that really pinged you and clicked for you, please share it in the comments. Or if there's an example where you were in fear that you switched it to love, and how did you do that? And how did your thoughts change? And what types of things did you come up with? Like, what kinds of things did you consider to get to that point? Like, please share it with us because we know that this is an introduction to the topic, but there's so much more that we can learn from each other, and we'd love to toss this one around. So,
Yeah, and your sharings may be part of those 400 repetitions that someone else needs to really
yeah,
cement this for them.
beautiful.
Yeah. Special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can learn more about Melissa at melissamossart.com. And thank you to Cloud Cult for our podcast music from their song There's So Much Energy in Us. Find out more about them at cloudcult.com. And thank you for listening. And until next time, friends, peace, love, and light.